All right, well, welcome everyone. Thank you again for coming out. I forgot to introduce myself earlier. I'm Liz Kiernan. I'm one of the science writers at Broad. And today I'm very excited to share with you a little intro to Terra, a platform, a bioinformatics platform where you can access data, run analysis tools, and collaborate on the cloud. So as many of you know, data generation is on a roll. If you're trying to unlock the mysteries of human genetics, you've got plenty of genomic and phenotypic data to work with. Governments and other institutions are investing millions of dollars into generating large data sets like the 1000 Genomes Project, which has over 3,000 participants. UK Biobank, which has over 500,000 participants, and the All of Us research program, which has over 1 million participants. And so we're talking about data that really has the potential to give us insights into human health. But as you can imagine, with all of this data comes several challenges. First of all, how are you going to find and access all of this data? How are you going to interpret the different file formats? And how are you going to keep the data secure and share it with your collaborators? And that's just finding the data and accessing it. As you can imagine, analyzing the data comes with its own challenges. How are you going to find custom tools and computational resources to actually analyze this? How are you going to ensure that your analyses are reproducible? So this is where Terra and the cloud comes in. So we're going to learn about what is Terra and why is it on the cloud. So in order to illustrate what Terra is, we first need to do a little historical perspective on the traditional approach to bioinformatics and what the cloud approach to bioinformatics is. So in the traditional approach to bioinformatics, we would bring data to the researchers. So data would exist in a central repository, and researchers at their own individual institutions would get a copy of that data. So that's not true data sharing, it's data copying. And as you can imagine, this requires large infrastructure, large storage costs to host the data. Also, each individual researcher at their institution is using custom tools that they're developing on their own institutional infrastructure. So it's very hard to replicate these tools and share them with colleagues across the world. And additionally, the security in the traditional approach depends sort of on the weakest security of whoever has the data. All right, so that's the traditional approach. So how does the cloud approach change that? In the cloud approach, data is stored in a central repository on the cloud, and researchers are brought to the data as opposed to data copying. So we're talking about true data sharing where researchers can access the data without necessarily copying it to their local infrastructure. Researchers will use portable tools and computational resources that live in the cloud, allowing researchers to share those tools, those exact tools, with each other through something called containers. By using cloud computers, we're talking about elastic computation, meaning that you can expand these computational resources to meet your needs. And so you're only paying for what you use, or you can turn them off essentially and not use them at all if you don't need them. So very different from working at your local infrastructure where you don't have that same kind of flexibility. And importantly, the security is centralized. So we're no longer putting the burden of security on the individual resources, and instead there's comprehensive central security fences for the data. All right. So this sounds great in theory, but as you can imagine, clouds are hard to use out of the box. You probably have a lot of questions, like how am I going to store my data in the cloud and find data in the cloud? How do I set up computational resources in the cloud and find different resources to use? How do I share my data and my resources with my collaborators? And how do I do this in a secure way? And that's where Terra comes in. So Terra is a platform developed in collaboration, developed by the Broad Institute in collaboration with Microsoft and Verily. And it's designed to do the heavy lifting of moving to the cloud for you. It has several core capabilities designed to support research. So it has a data library where you can access public and access controlled data sets. We're going to be exploring this today in our hands-on exercises. It has workspaces, and these are shareable units where you can bring together data and tools. It has workflows where you can perform your analyses at scale. And for those who don't know, workflows are essentially a script or a set of instructions. In Terra, they're written in something called the workflow description language, or WDL. So that's why you see this WDL here. And Terra also offers interactive analysis. So you can analyze your data with built-in applications that you may already be familiar with, such as Jupyter Notebooks, RStudio, and Galaxy. And all of these tools are designed to help you interrogate your data in real time. And we want to emphasize that Terra is a hub in the cloud data ecosystem. So this is an open ecosystem. Terra is not an island. And what that means is that you can find tools and data and computational resources in Terra, but you're not limited to Terra. You can find resources in other that belong to other consortia, in other tool repositories, and you can bring those tools and data into Terra. So it's all meant to kind of be an open ecosystem working together. And Terra is built secure to work with highly sensitive data, including human genomes, clinical data, and many other types. There's a 15-minute clinical timeout for those of you who are clinicians. Terra is in a FISMA and FedRAMP moderate environment that covers all the components that are part of that ecosystem. And you can find Terra on the FedRAMP marketplace. All right. So we're going to get started with a little live tour of Terra. Before I jump over to alwazi.terra.bio, I just wanted to see if there were any questions that people had just about anything that we just talked about. Okay. All right. So let me get out of here. Whoops. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to navigate now to alwazi.terra.bio. We can paste a link to this in the chat, but please feel free to just watch me for this demo. You're going to be getting hands-on, and we're going to give you time to go to the platform today. Let me blow this up here. Okay. All right. So welcome to Alwazi powered by Terra. When you come to the landing page for alwazi.terra.bio, you can see 3 cards where you can immediately go in and view your workspaces. So this is any workspace that you've created or copied. You can have a quick link here to tutorial workspaces, what we call our featured or showcase workspaces. And you can browse data in the Terra Data Library. So this takes you to that data library where you can see all the different consortia repositories that are available. The main menu in Terra is this horizontal 3-bar icon at the top left of the platform here. So I'm going to click on this, and you can see it gives you several drop-down options. The first option here, if you haven't signed in, you'll be prompted to sign in. And we're going to do that today. But once you've signed in, you should see your profile drop-down. And so you have several options where you can go in and adjust your profile, like your contact email. You can see what groups you belong to. You can see what billing projects you belong to. So today we've hopefully added everybody to a billing project that we're going to explore. You could see that billing project if you were to go into this billing section here. You can also see what kind of virtual computer environments you've made, what we call cloud environments. So today we're going to be getting practice on this. And when you create your own custom computer today, you should see that computer listed in this cloud environment section. The Workspaces page, as I mentioned from the quick link on the card out here, is where you can see all of the workspaces that you've created or copied. And you also have the option to explore those showcase workspaces or any public workspaces. So these are workspaces that others have made that they said, I want to make accessible to the public. So you can definitely try those out. The library section, we're going to explore this in just a moment, but this is where you can access the Teradata Library. Again, those showcase workspaces, those are our featured workspaces. It's the same workspaces that are listed in this featured section here. And you can go in and explore workflows. Again, so those are scripts written in the workflow description language, WDL, maybe if you have a certain set of tools that you like to use, you might be able to find some workflows that already make use of those tools. And of course, the last thing I want to point out on this main menu is the support section. Very important, because everyone, goes off and starts their hands-on stuff, and they might have questions after the workshop. So this is where you might be able to find your answers. So we have a quick start guide to get you up and running on Terra. We have Terra support as well, and several tutorials. So these are all on our knowledge base. We have several videos that we host on YouTube that can walk you through how to do different things step by step on Terra. You can request a feature, or you can try finding answers on our community forum or posting a question to our community forum. We have a wonderful team of support, a wonderful support team who goes in and looks for questions and tries to answer them. You can also contact them directly using this contact us. You can follow the latest releases on Terra, see what changes are coming by following the release notes. Okay. All right. Let me just see really fast. Can I clear that? Okay. Okay. Sorry, I was clearing the dots that I seem to have made on my page here. I don't know if you all could see that, but okay. So I now want to turn our attention to this library section here on Terra, because this is kind of the heart of where you can find example data and tools to play with. We're going to be using several of these today in this workshop, and you can continue playing with them after the workshop. So the first thing I want to show you is the Teradata Library. So when you come to the Teradata Library, what you're going to see is different repositories hosted by different consortia. Some of these have public access data in it, like this 1000 genomes low coverage one. We're going to be using this repository today to find a cohort. But there's also several private access data sets as well in here. So again, this is something you can feel free to go in and explore later on. Some other open access ones I want to point out, ENCODE project. So if you're interested in epigenomic data, you can go in and browse a cohort of participants that might meet your research criteria here. We also have the Human Cell Atlas project or the Neuroscience Multi-Omic Archive. Both of these host single cell data, especially expression data. So you can go in and explore those and export them to a Terra workspace. And each of these different consortia look a little bit different. So I'm going to just show you what this 1000 genomes repository looks like to give you a sense. We're going to be using this again today, but you can go in and select different participant criteria to create your own unique cohort. You can save that cohort then and export it to Terra. So this is the way the 1000 genomes browser looks, but if you explore some of those other data libraries, they're going to look a little bit different. Each one kind of has its own unique interface and unique way of exporting data to Terra. But they all have one thing in common, that you can go in and find a cohort of data that matches your research interests. The other option I want to highlight is the featured workspaces. And if I were to go to my main menu, I could also find this under Showcase here. So let's explore the featured workspaces section for a moment. So this is where you can find example workspaces. And I'm going to show you one of these in a moment, but workspaces are like the heart of Terra. It's where all the action happens, where you bring your data, where you bring your analysis tools, and how you share all of those analyses with your colleagues. These tutorial workspaces often have very detailed, they're curated, so they often have very detailed instructions in them, step-by-step instructions on how to use the different tools. They also have downsampled data to get you playing on them and trying out the different tools at low cost. You can search for different tools by name in the description of them, or you can use the filter. For example, let's say I'm interested in bioconductor. I do a lot of bioconductor work. I can find workspaces that use bioconductor here. You can also, as I mentioned, use these filters. So we have this getting started section. We're going to use this today to look at our Jupyter Notebook tutorial workspace. But you can also filter down by the different analysis tools that are in these workspaces: experimental strategy, data generation technology or scientific domain, data sets and utilities, and by projects. So we're going to give you an opportunity to go in here and play today. But right now, I want to pull up one example workspace that we can explore a little bit further so you can get an understanding of what a workspace is. So I'm going to look for this COVID-19 workspace here. This is a tutorial workspace that's designed to help analyze different SARS-CoV-2 isolates. It contains whole genome data for those isolates. All right, so let's walk through a workspace. All right. When you come to a workspace, the first thing you'll notice at the top here is the name of the workspace. So this is the COVID-19 workspace. And names are always preceded by the billing project that's supporting the workspace. So in this case, it's pathogen genomic surveillance. To the right over here, you see what's called the cloud environment widget. This is where you can create a custom virtual computer. We're going to be exploring this today, and we'll talk about some changes that are coming to this as well today. And then every time you come to a workspace, you'll land by default on the dashboard of the workspace. So the dashboard is a place where you can describe what's in the workspace, what kind of data and tools are there for people to use. You can include graphics as shown here and description. And most of our featured workspaces also contain cost estimates for how much it'll cost to run certain tools that are in the workspace. To the right of the dashboard is workspace information. So you can see what kind of access level you have to this workspace. You can see here that I'm just a reader on this workspace. It also says that up here. And you can see who owns the workspace. So if you wanted to reach out to them to get permission to do something in there, you could do that. And importantly, at the bottom here, you can see a Google bucket. And the ID for this Google bucket starts with this FC. So every time you copy a workspace or create a workspace from scratch in Terra, you're going to get workspace storage that's associated with that workspace. This storage is in the form of a Google bucket, and it lives on the Google Cloud platform. So what this means is because it's integrated with the workspace, when you delete this workspace, you're going to delete that storage too. So they go hand in hand. All right. So let's change gears now and explore some of these other tabs, starting with this data page. All right. So one of the hardest things, concepts about coming to the cloud is where your data is located and how you use it. So maybe you're used to working at your local computer. Maybe you download files and store them in a single directory to do your analysis. But when you're working on the cloud, it's a little bit different because you don't need to copy necessarily your data to any particular location. You're going to be accessing your data where it lives in its cloud repository. So if you're working with thousands of samples, how do you organize all that data if it's living in the cloud? And the way we do this in Terra is through different data tables. So I'm going to click on one of these. And so you can see that data tables are very much like spreadsheets. They have rows and they have columns. Now, before I go into too many details about this, I wanted to use this as an opportunity for you all to get on the platform and start exploring these tables. So I'm going to give you all some time to get into breakout groups. We're going to actually split off into breakout rooms. And I want you to think about 3 different questions. What types of data and files do you see in these different tables? I want you to feel free to explore and click around in these different sections. And look at the different types of data that are in here. See if you notice any trends. How are these tables all different? And where are the files actually located? So each of these samples, or not necessarily all of them, but many of the samples have files located, have files listed in their data tables. Feel free to click on links and just explore for 5 minutes. And share with your colleagues what you observe, and then we'll come back and talk about it. So I'm going to set up some breakout rooms now. So we're going to do about 10 breakout rooms here. All right. And we're going to, again, do this for 5 minutes. All right. So all the rooms are open. So go ahead and join your breakout rooms. and chat with your colleagues about this. And TAs, if you wouldn't mind posting in the chat the questions that I asked, that'd be great. Oops. All right. Can the TAs jump on to the breakout rooms too, maybe, just to see if people are chatting, make sure everybody has what they need, kind of. Hi, everyone. Does everyone have a link to the workspace? Did everybody catch that? All right, everyone's logged in. Please feel free, take this opportunity to chat with one another and explore these tables. You can talk together about what you see. No wrong answers or anything. It's just an opportunity to kind of get a feel for how data is organized. I'll paste the link in the chat here.
So how do we get to the table? I see all these menu options: data, notebooks, workflows.
Let's see. I just posted a direct link in the Zoom chat. You would go to the data page.
Data page. Okay, yeah. That's where it was. Okay.
Great.
And was it workspace data or files?
We explore all of them. So just take a look, start clicking around and get a feel for what you're seeing. All right, I'm gonna jump over to another room and make sure that everyone is able to get on and everything. But again, please feel free to work together too on it. So, all right. Hi, everyone. Does everyone have a link to the workspace right now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, so please feel free to turn your cameras on or your mics on and talk with each other about what you're seeing in the data tables, exploring those 3 questions that we talked about. What types of data and files, how are the tables different, and where do the files actually live on the cloud? All right, I'll jump to another room to make sure everyone's okay.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to make sure that everyone had a link to the workspace data page, that you're finding it, and that you know what we're supposed to be exploring right now.
Hey, yeah, we got the link and we're trying to explore it.
Great. So please feel free to, unmute yourselves, talk with each other about what you're seeing in the different data tables. No wrong answers. It's just an opportunity to explore together.
Okay, perfect.
All right, I'll jump to another room to make sure everyone's okay. Thank you. Hi, everyone. I just wanted to make sure you all had a link to the table, the data page, and
Yes, thank you, Liz. So I went to Terra, and there's several TSV files you could download. So which one are we supposed to pick?
You don't have to pick any one particular file. This is just an opportunity to go look at the data page and explore the different files that are in the table, click on links, see what kind of data is actually in there, see how the different data tables are different.
I see. I was following one of the slides that you sent, right? That had the 5-minute exercise. I thought that's what we were doing.
Nope.
Oh, okay, thank you. That's helpful.
All right, thank you. I'm gonna jump to another room to make sure everyone's doing okay. Oh, and please feel free to unmute and work together and chat about it, okay?
MySeq and so forth. Hi, Liz.
Hello, I'm just jumping on to make sure everybody has the links and are doing okay in discussion. It sounds like you guys are actually chatting, so that's good. Is everybody okay to access the workspace?
Yes.
Yeah, so far so good.
Yeah, so far so good.
Great. Okay, we'll come back in just a few minutes. So thank you all. I'm going to jump to another room.
No, thank you.
Oh. Hello.
Hey.
Hi. I guess everyone was able to access it. Okay, I'm just jumping around to different rooms to make sure everyone's on it.
Yeah, I think we're good.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, is 1 more minute probably good?
Yeah, I think 1 more minute's good. Yeah.
Okay. All right, great.
Thanks, Liz.
Thank you. Hi, how's everyone doing here in the main room?
Hey, Liz.
Hey. Jenica, were you assigned to a breakout room or did you jump on late? I'm not sure. Oh, maybe not. All right. All right, here we go. Welcome back, everyone. We're still waiting for a few people to jump from the breakout room back onto the main Zoom.
Hey, I'm so sorry, it's Jenica. I had to run quickly, but I'm back.
Oh, no worries.
The breakout room, but that's okay. I'll definitely catch up.
Well, you'll definitely catch up. We're going to go over it right now.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Oh, great. Welcome back, everybody. Okay, so we don't have to spend too much time going over what you discussed. Thank you all for jumping in and getting those conversations started. It's also a great trial run for getting onto Terra. So you probably found out pretty fast if you had any issues logging in. So let's talk about these different tables really fast. So did anyone notice what types of different files? There's no wrong answers here, but did anyone notice any particular file types or types of data that they saw in these tables? We can start with this sample table here. Anyone want to bravely unmute themselves and mention what they saw?
How about the fast QC report HTML file?
Yeah. Yeah. So there was some fast QC HTML. Did you click on the link here?
I clicked on, I didn't download or anything, but my question was, that's a website. Why do we have to download it to storage? Why doesn't it just show the website?
All right, great. So this is a great question. So you don't have to download it. This is an option to download if you, for whatever reason, wanted to download the file to your local computer. But you're right, you don't have to download it from the cloud storage. If you click on this, you can see where the file lives. As we mentioned, all the files live in their own repositories on the cloud. So you can go to the folder that holds that file and find it here as well. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Yeah. And you'll also notice that you can get a preview of several files if you click on the link in here. Any other data that people noticed?
Yeah, I noticed some files in Trinity.
In Trinity?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we see.
I'm not conversed with that. So how do they do? What? Just take me around there.
Oh, well, wait. Let's see if I can find the Trinity files here. Do you know what column they were in? Do you remember what column you saw the files in?
No, they were not. They were in the. I took a different workspace, the COVID-19 KCO incubator. I was doing my own hands-on, so.
Okay. Okay, great. Well, that's amazing that you're already exploring other workspaces. So I can't necessarily speak to the Trinity files in there, but if you want to explore that after the workshop and see what the dashboard has to say about them, I bet you'll find some of the answers. And if you don't, you can reach out to the owners of the workspace too.
Okay.
Actually, there are 20 files in this workspace as well. If you go to config column.
All right.
If you go to configs column, yeah.
Oh, the contigs column? Yeah.
Yes, please. No.
Yeah, so we don't need to necessarily go into all of this contigs FASTA. So one thing I can do to quickly get to this is I can select none and then go right here to the contigs FASTA and voila. So we can, there we go, there are some Trinity files. All right, now if you'll notice, these are not necessarily located in the same location as the other files were. And you can actually see the location of where these files in the cloud by going down to this terminal command. You could also view it on the Google Cloud Storage like I just showed. But you can see right off the bat what the URL is. This is what we call a URI, is for this data by just looking down here at the file path. So we can scroll all the way over. We're going to be using this terminal download command a little bit later in the workshop, but this is just kind of a quick view of the full file path for where the file is located. All right.
If I understand, I would assume each person that creates their workspace encodes their files according to how it's better, easy for them. Is that correct?
No, and that's a great. So that's a great point. So no, when you copy this workspace, or if you were to copy this data table over to your workspace, these files stay where they're located in the cloud. And that's like I said, this is the hardest concept about kind of coming to the cloud, is understanding that your files stay in one repository, but you can access them from different workspaces and actually analyze them from different workspaces. They don't need to move necessarily.
Talking about the encoding method that the author of the file would use, like you're free to use every kind of analysis or encoding method to get your files ready for upload. Is that correct?
So let me understand this correctly. You're asking if the file's not quite in the format that you need it to be, can you change the format?
No. If you, the author, I'm asking in the name, like I'm taking the place of the author. If I'm an author, I have some data I want to make available on cloud. I am free to encode or to deliver it any method, any file format, I suppose.
Oh yeah, you can, yes, any of these, yeah, and that's why we love this workspace, because there's all kinds of different file formats in here. Yes, if you are someone who has data and you want to upload it to the cloud, it does not matter what format that file is in. You can upload any type of file, text file, FASTA file, any file that you want, picture, image. All data types can be hosted in these Google Cloud repositories. Does that answer?
Last question? Yeah, it answers my question. Last question. Some files for download had, download $0.01 and others could download for free. What's that? Yeah.
That might depend on the type of repository that it's in. And Tiffany, maybe you can correct me too if you know more about this. But there are different types of repositories, different types of ownership on it. Some repositories are completely open source and it's very cheap to move data to your local computer. Other data might be stored in a request or pays bucket where you have to actually pay to move a file. Could depend on the file size as well. So you do pay to move files around on the cloud. If you're downloading in particular, it's actually quite cheap to move files around to different cloud locations. Downloading files to your local computer can cost a little bit more.
Okay. Perfect, I got that. Perfect, thank you.
Great. All right, so hopefully you've seen now some features of organizing this data. The other thing I want to point out on this table is you can search for particular samples as well. So if this one doesn't have, unfortunately, a Trinity file associated with it, but you can search in the table for these different files. And hopefully you also saw that there are all kinds of different, it's not just data files that you host and organize in these tables. For each of these samples, you might have something like an accession number, where it was isolated from. So you can imagine if you're a clinician and you're trying to organize data for patients, you can not only host genomic files for those patients in these data tables, you can also put in phenotypic data in here as well. So that's what, oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I had a question regarding, do you have like a README file for like what the columns stand for? Because there's like a lot of them and it's just.
Yeah, great question. So these tables are actually made by the person who created the workspace. They can name them anything they want. There's no set column names here. You can name tables anything you want. Every table, the first column of every table in the table section here will have an ID column. And then after that, and it has to be formatted in a specific way, which we may have time to go into some details today about, but all these, the table name and all of the column headers are chosen by the person who makes the table. So I don't have a README in particular for this data table. We'd have to reach out to the owners of the workspace and see if that's something that they could add maybe to the dashboard to explain what each one is. They may already have some of that information in the dashboard.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. The other thing is you can have as many columns and rows as you need to describe your data. So I'm going to just quickly go over to the set table because as the set table is very similar to the sample table, but what I want to call out is that you can organize sets of samples from your sample table, or you could call this a participant table or a specimen table, whatever you need to. You can make a set of whatever entity is in here to run analyses. So here you can see several different set IDs that they've made from this sample table. So these tables are actually connected. And if we go and look at what the column headers are, you'll always see a column in a set table that matches what the entity table is it's pulling data from. So here you can see it's the samples. So if you need to run on a particular set of samples, you can do that too, if that's how you want to organize your data. All right, the other thing I want to call out here is this workspace data page. Now you'll notice that this looks different than the other tables. And that's because this workspace data section, instead of being designed to necessarily host sample or input samples that you want to analyze, this is meant to host data references that kind of apply to your samples in order to do analysis on them. So for example, it might have reference files in it, FASTAs or index files that you need to perform analyses. So this is a place where you can upload that kind of information. And this workspace doesn't have it, but this reference data section is also a place where you can choose a preloaded table for human reference files, for human genomic analyses. So that includes B37 and HG38. I can't show you that because again, this is in read-only mode right now, but we can play with that a little later too. Okay, the last thing I want to call out here is this file section. This is actually a window into the Google bucket associated with this workspace. So if you were to go far enough down these file paths to find a file to look at and open it up in the Google Cloud Platform, you would see that all of these files are actually hosted in the same Google Cloud folder in there. So this is a window into your Google bucket associated with the workspace. And I'm just gonna go to this here just to proof of concept. So here you can see the same, that we're in the Workspace Google bucket on the Google Cloud Platform side of things, and you can see the exact same files that we saw here. So this is like a window into your Google bucket. And we're gonna get some practice uploading to your own Google buckets on your own copies today. All right, I'm gonna, if there's any other, are there any other questions related to this data page? Okay, all right, so once you have data in the cloud, the next step is you want to analyze it in some way. And so Terra has a couple of options. Oh, I see someone may have raised their hand. You can go ahead and unmute yourself and ask.
Yes, this is Ron. I was just trying to understand. So you have the location for the reference data, and you have location for the data itself. And is there any? I mean, how do you link the two for an analysis? Is it something that is given to you by the owner of the data set, or is there any thing that allows you to link both of them?
Sorry, so how do you link your, sorry, what's the question? My computer fan started whizzing right when you were just mentioning this. Is the question, how do you link, say, your input files, like your samples that you want to analyze with this reference data?
Yeah, how do you know that this is, how do you know this? Is it something that is given to you by the owner of the data, and you're using this place as a storage for us to get the data, or is there anything in this platform that actually helps you linking both of them?
Yeah, so in terms of so if you are someone who does analysis, you probably have in your head what tools you need to do your analysis. For example, if you're a person who does genomic analyses and you want to align your raw sequencing reads to a genome, you're gonna need the reads from your samples, and you're gonna need some reference files. You can organize those files in these tables however you would like. We recommend, again, using input samples here, and reference data can be either from these preloaded tables or in this workspace data page. But when it comes to actually doing the analysis, we're going to show you today how you can bring data in from these tables into an application. At a later workshop, we'll show you workflows too. So I think my point is that Terra has some built-in features that allow you to pull the information that are in these tables into your analysis. And that's your choice, like which workflow you're running, which script you're running, and how you organize the data is your choice too. So if you're working on a common workspace, maybe it is given to you how it should be set up. But otherwise, if you're starting from scratch, it's up to you how you want to organize them. And I think maybe so let's come back to this question after, a little later in the workshop, and make sure that you've gotten this question answered. I think it'll start to make sense after you've gotten some hands-on with it. Okay.
Yeah, hello. So hello. I have a question. Yeah. So my question is, suppose I'm a owner of a data set and I want to share it with my collaborators or using Terra. How would it be like? I mean, am I still going to use this portal, or is there another portal I can use to link? Like, for example, let's say my data is somewhere else on a cloud platform, and I want to share my data with some collaborators who are using Terra. How is it going to be like?
Oh, this is a great question. And we're going to practice this today, but it's actually pretty straightforward. If your data is already organized in a workspace, there are a couple of ways you can do this. Tiffany's actually going to go over some of this today in the billing and collaboration section that we're going to get to in just a few minutes. Actually, this will make much more sense. But essentially, there's this vertical 3-dot icon here. You have the option to share your workspace. I can't share this right now because I'm not an owner on this workspace. So we're gonna show you this in this workshop later on how to do this. But essentially, when you click this share icon, it's gonna give you the option to share this entire workspace with a collaborator. So they can have access to all the same data and files if they need to that are in the workspace. So they'll be able to just come to this workspace and access your data. Alternatively, if you don't want to share your workspace, but you want to point them to where data is located, you can do that on the Google Cloud Platform side as well. I believe you can share your files with a particular ID, and they can bring and organize the files as they want. So there's actually a lot of flexibility in how you can share data.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. All right. And so these are fantastic questions. Thank you all for asking them. So once you have your data in your workspace and you have it kind of organized in the cloud, you can pick how you want to analyze it. So one way you can do this is to analyze it in real time doing interactive analysis. So you can launch an application like a Jupyter Notebooks, Notebook. This tab says notebooks right now, but it's actually going to be changing to applications. Because currently you can launch 3 different applications, actually more than that, but 3 main supported applications in Terra. Jupyter Notebooks, like this one here. You can also launch a Galaxy instance. So if you're someone who already works in Galaxy, you can launch it from Terra as well. And you can launch RStudio. So today we're going to be working with Jupyter Notebooks, and currently this Notebooks page only hosts Jupyter Notebooks in it with the option to launch a Galaxy instance. But we'll talk more about those changes. I don't want to confuse everybody, but so this notebook or this workspace has 1 Jupyter Notebook in it. I'm just going to click into this. This is what we're going to be doing some practice today on Jupyter Notebooks. But for those who don't know, a Jupyter Notebook is essentially like a digital lab notebook. It allows you to document code, so you can describe what the code is doing and why. But you can also run code in real time on data. So today we're going to get practice how to bring in data to a Jupyter Notebook and do some analyses on it. The last thing I want to call out is another type of analysis you can do in addition to launching an application is doing workflows. So I've mentioned this a couple of times, but this is a good option if you have a lot of samples that you want to automate your analysis of, do the analysis at scale. You can find or create a workflow written in the workflow description language. And you can find it from doing this find a workflow option. This workspace has several that are already in here that are described in the dashboard. But just to show you, when you click on a workflow in Terra, it brings you to the setup page. And from here, you can choose which data from your data table, if you want to use a data table to pull files, and you can set up your inputs. You can also write outputs back to a data table in Terra. So again, it helps you keep all your inputs, outputs organized, and you can search those data tables so you can find samples quickly if you need to grab a certain file. If you want to see the script, you can do that from the script tab on this page. So unfortunately, we're not going to get to workflows so much today, but we will be covering workflows in a later workshop. The job history tab that you see here, this is where you can look at the status of a workflow that you've launched on your samples. So you can see if it's finished, if it ran successfully, or if there were any errors. And Tiffany's going to show you this today as well, but you can go into the job history and also look at cost estimates for running a workflow as well. All right, so that concludes our platform tour for right now. And we are going to be diving into some hands-on exercises, but first I'm going to turn this over to Tiffany so she can tell you more about building and secure collaboration.
Liz, quick question. Do we have a moment to take a few minutes of a break just to break up the presentation?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
maybe we can resume in 5 minutes. For Eastern Standard Time would be 9:11, but
4:10 your time, or 4:11 your time, I think, for you if you're joining us from Africa.
Okay.
Liz,
so,
can I ask a question, please?
Yes.
So I was just wondering, with regards to sharing to a collaborator, how much capability do they have in the workspace once you've shared it? Like, what can they edit, remove, or add?
This is a great question. Tiffany's actually going to cover this in her presentation in part. So the answer is you have flexibility in how much you give them. So, and she'll go a little bit more into the different permissions. All right, well, let's take our break, and we'll see you guys back here at 4:11.
Liz, you can see my slides okay?
I can, but it's currently in, it's not in presenter view yet.
Okay, cool. I'm just getting this Zoom organized, so I'm off of mute and I have my video going and I will do the presenter view. Is it about time to get started?
It is. So welcome back, everyone.
All right. Excellent. So I'm not gonna, oh, actually I can see some folks. Okay, cool. I'm not gonna be able to see the chat, so please interrupt me if you have any questions. Okay, so we'll dive right into building and secure collaboration. Hey everyone, my name is Tiffany Miller. I'm also part of the Terra user education and support team. And I'll be spending the next 25-30 minutes or so talking to you about how this works, how billing works in Terra, and how you can share workspaces and things like that and understand a little bit more about how that relates to costs. So let's go ahead and get started. So for our goals for this session, I have these questions listed here that we're going to look at right now. And at the very end, by the end of the presentation, we should be able to answer all of these questions. So what cloud computing vendors work with Terra? You may have gotten some hints from Liz's presentation earlier on this. What costs money in Terra and how do you pay for it? So we talked a little bit about things that cost money in Liz's presentation with Egress. So we'll go into that as well. What is a Terra billing project and how is it connected with a workspace? So when we talked earlier about this billing form and we asked you all to give us your information so we could add you to the Terra billing project, this is what we're going to be going over and why you create those and what they are. Where can you see how much you've spent? So there are different places you can see this in the platform. We'll go over that. And any recommendations for getting started with running analyses and securely sharing workspaces. So we'll just cover some tips there. Okay, so we're going to start off with the cloud vendors and just talk a little bit about them. Let me move my screen over here. Okay, so this picture here shows some of the top cloud vendors. We have the Google Cloud Platform, Amazon Web Services, and Microsoft Azure. These cloud platforms offer technical infrastructure to customers at a cost. They make money from charging usage fees to customers on a pay-as-you-go basis. And you can actually get information on their websites about what costs money and all of the things that they charge for. So yes, they make money from charging usage fees to customers. And if you use a machine in their data center, that's when you get charged a fee. So Terra, we make use of cloud vendors in order to give researchers the ability to analyze their data sets on the scalable computing infrastructure that these cloud vendors can offer. Genomic data or any data that we're analyzing, if it's a lot of data, can be very large, and people don't want to have to maintain their own data centers to support doing, an analysis that's really big once in a while. So Terra is taking advantage of these cloud vendors, the ability to do that scale whenever you need to use that scale. And another reason using the cloud is important is because it makes it easier to collaborate with people outside of your own organization. You can easily share like you would, in a Google Drive or something like that. So you can sign up for a Terra account at no cost, which many of you probably experienced doing that today or earlier this week. And you can browse data sets and content like featured workspaces that demo interesting analyses and tools. That's all free. Terra itself, we do not charge anything for that. What you actually pay for is you pay the cloud vendor for what you're using. So to actually run analyses yourself, you'll need to set up billing. And the reason we had you all sign up for billing before the workshop is because we want you to have the ability to create workspaces. And when you create those workspaces, that's when you can start accruing cost. So you set up billing directly with the cloud vendor or a reseller of that cloud vendor that will take care of everything for you. And I believe the consortium is still figuring out the reseller situation so that every individual doesn't have to go off and try to set this up. But we'll talk more about that later on. So today, Terra operates on the Google Cloud platform. So you'll need to establish a Google billing account to get started. But in the future, we're also going to be supporting Azure. And so you'll be working, you figuratively speaking, or your group or whatever will establish a billing relationship with Microsoft Azure if that's the cloud vendor that you want to work on. So let's go ahead and view the 3 main ways that the cloud vendors charge for their services. All right, so these are the three main ways. We have compute costs, data storage, and data egress. We saw a little bit of the data storage, data egress in the platform tour with the Google bucket. Having a workspace that has a Google bucket means that you can put files into your Google bucket as, maybe input files to your analyses. Anytime you're running a workflow or doing anything in a cloud environment that you want to save back to your workspace, that's all, you can store that in your Workspace's Google bucket. So that's what we mean by data storage. And then by data egress, we saw that as well. We saw, how you can download files from different locations, and depending on where the file is located, you may pay a different amount. So if I am trying to download, or if I'm trying to move a file from the Google Cloud data center in Australia over to the United States, that there would be a fee for doing that. If I'm trying to move within the Eastern United States, within the same region, if I'm trying to move a file, it might be free. So it all depends on what the cloud vendor, their pricing is. So I skipped compute costs, but that's because we didn't go into it as much as we did data storage and egress. But compute costs are happening when you're in your workspace and you're running what Liz demoed, the workflows. With running those workflows, you're actually spinning up machines in the cloud, and you can set different parameters for those machines so that you can make them as small as you want to get the job done, or as large as you need them. That's the workflows. We think of them as like these batch analyses, these big analyses that we can say, go do this. I know it's going to take a while. Let me know when you're done and come back and give me the outputs. The interactive analyses that we're going to be focusing on in this workshop are the cloud environments, where you can actually spin up a single virtual machine in the cloud, in Google Cloud, and you can do some prodding of the data live. So that's where compute costs can come in. All right, so how do you use these services in Terra? So we looked at workspaces. You can think of your workspace as a way of organizing how you're doing your project or doing your data analysis. And as I mentioned, this is where you've got your workspace bucket. This is where you can spin up, you can run workflows, or you can run these cloud environments for compute, and that's how you're going to be accruing costs. So costs are therefore organized by your workspace. And in this image, just of this dashboard, you can see these are all individual workspaces. And I can grant people roles to these workspaces. I can grant them reader roles, or I can grant them roles that will enable them to, compute within my workspace. And we'll go over those roles more. But the essential point here is, if you give people access to your workspace, you're giving them permission to spend money. The role that you give them to your workspace will impact what they can do and how much they can spend. And there is some nuance here that we don't need to go into in the intro, but like, how do you make sure that nobody can spend any money in your workspace and still share it with them? We can talk about that, but essentially, just right out of the box, if you're giving somebody access to your workspace, if you're giving them access to read files that are, say, they're located in your workspace bucket, they could be accruing some sort of cost. It might be very small. So that's how costs are organized. And these workspaces are connected to cloud platforms by the way of a Terra billing project. So you all provided your information so that we could add you to this Terra billing project. This is what it looks like if I want to go create a Terra billing project. I like this screenshot because it shows you how it connects you with a billing account in the cloud. So here I can enter a name for a billing project, and right here I have to select a billing account that is from Google right now. That's how I can establish that relationship. So I have workspaces. When I create a workspace, I basically choose which Terra billing project I'm going to use to pay for these workspaces. And that Terra billing project is linked with one cloud billing account. So people may have a grant, they establish a cloud billing account with a grant, they have maybe one Terra billing project for that grant, and perhaps they give people access to their Terra billing project to create workspaces. And that's how you can kind of relate all that costs back to a grant. So that's just a quick example of that. Any questions about the Terra billing project?
Can you have more than one billing project per Google billing account?
Yes, you technically can. Yes, you can create different names for your Terra billing projects and link them all to the same cloud billing account. Anything else?
How do we create a Google billing account?
Yeah, so we're going to go into that at the very end. I'll leave that for the end because I am imagining that through this consortium, through this program, that there will be somebody setting it up for you so that you don't have to follow these steps, but I will go through the ways in which you can set that up.
I had a question. I have a Google Cloud platform set up and kind of used all of my free trials already. I'm always like confused with how the pricing goes. I was wondering if you knew if there was a way to cap it to, for example, like $200 or $300, and then, you know, it would stop by itself instead of like keep billing, or like I use a lot of like APIs for like spatial maps and stuff, and I never keep track of them. So I was wondering if there was a way to do that.
A great question. So right now, there's not a way to cap the costs very easily from a user's perspective. So the way that we recommend people kind of dealing with that problem is using budget alerts, or setting up, you can set up forecasted alerts or actual budget alerts. So this is actually not through Terra, and maybe one day it will be, but you're able to actually go to the cloud billing account within the Google Cloud Console and set up these alerts. So say you want Google to email you if you're forecasted to be spending a certain amount of money, like within a certain amount of time. You can set that alert up and they'll email you if you're getting close to that number based off of maybe what you've been doing.
Right. All righty. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into compute costs a little bit more, and where you can actually view information about compute costs. I'll actually cover every area: compute costs, storage, and egress, and how you can view that information in Terra. So when you're just getting started, we often recommend checking out a featured workspace where we've actually demoed a workflow on a sample that's very small, or a small input file size, a small file size as an input. And we give you on the dashboard a sense of how much it costs and how long it's going to take to run. So that's usually what we tell people when they're kind of just getting started. They're playing around, they're understanding what workflows are. Again, we're not going to go over workflows in this workshop right now, but I wanted to make you all aware of that in case you do spend some time checking that out. There's also built-in cost reporting, and there's some steps that we link to in our slides for how to set that up. But this built-in cost reporting, what it does is on your job history tab that Liz showed you all through the tour, you're able to see a total run cost after you've run your workflow. So that's really nice. When you're getting started, we often tell people, run your workflow on like a small input file or maybe a small sample. Do that first, see how much it costs, and then as you're ramping up to maybe you do one file, then you want to run the workflow on 10 files. Then you can kind of get a sense of how much it's going to cost you. And then you can also, if you're trying to estimate, like how much is it going to cost for me to do all of these analyses, if you're in that situation, we often also recommend that you add a buffer for failed jobs. So what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is when you're running workflows in Terra, you're not always going to have a successful workflow that runs successfully and it's all finished and done. You might end up having to run a workflow a few times. And when you're doing that, whether it succeeds or fails, there are files that are getting created and they're going to be added to your Workspaces bucket. And so you want to just account for compute that you might be spending on jobs that have failed. There are ways in which we get around this that are called ways like a feature called call caching, but that's kind of for another time. We can get into that later, but that's essentially what we recommend when you're sort of getting started trying to estimate how much you're going to spend on running workflows. Now, what we'll focus on in this workshop is interactive analyses through cloud environments. And this is a screenshot of the widget itself and how you can basically adjust like the CPUs, the memory, the persistent disk size. These are all parameters of that machine. You can adjust those settings and you can actually see in real time how much it's going to cost you. So you can basically get a good sense of that as you're getting going. Something we recommend when you're done using those machines, if you're just playing around, go ahead and delete it when you're done, because then you don't have to worry about any costs. If you leave it running, there is this feature that we have where it auto pauses if it's not being used after a certain amount of time. So that'll make sure that you don't, leave this machine out and you're spending money on this machine. It reduces the cost of having that machine exist very much, like by a lot. So best practice though is if you're just getting started, you're playing around, delete the machine when you're done, and you can see again, like I said, the cost estimate of how much that'll be. Okay, so let's go to storage costs. So in your workspace on your dashboard, we give you an estimated monthly cost for having this workspace exist with whatever files are located in the Google bucket as it stands. So that's a way that you can, feel good about having a workspace that's out there. Usually storage is not too bad. I guess it depends on how much data you're storing, but you can see a cost estimate in your dashboard. Egress costs or download costs. So we looked at this. There is a price estimate for how much it's going to cost to like download that file to your local machine. So when people are thinking about how you estimate like how much money for your project, that you need, we often ask people like, when you're done with this project, are you going to be downloading any derived data somewhere? Are you going to be storing it? Are you going to be moving it to another location? You can kind of think of that, those costs when you're planning for your project. And somebody asked them a question about like, do you get charged if you move data from one workspace bucket to another? When you're creating your workspace, and you'll see this later on, I believe, when you create a workspace, there's like a section where you choose where your bucket will be located. So if you are moving data from the same region within the Google Cloud, the egress, I believe it's usually 0 for moving it within the same region. If you're moving data from somebody's workspace that's like in another location, in another place, that's located in another part of the cloud, there might be an egress fee for that. So I hope that answers that question. But essentially, you don't want to necessarily be copying data from one workspace's Google bucket to another. Instead, you want to use those data tables and point to that person's data for your analysis, so that you don't have to move that data yourself, and you only use it when you need to analyze it. So that's kind of a way to avoid costs like that. Okay, so now I'm going to go over roles and permissions. So this is that diagram that I showed you all earlier about the cloud billing account linking to your Terra billing project and creating workspaces under that Terra billing project. Your Terra billing project itself has different roles so that you can control basically who can use your Terra billing project and then who can share the ability to grant other people access to your Terra billing project. And there's only 2 roles. There's owners of the Terra billing project, and then there are users. So owners, like I said, can grant Terra billing project permissions to other collaborators. So if I'm an owner and Liz is an owner, basically if we're owners of the Terra billing project, we can grant other people access to use our Terra billing project. But if Liz was just a user of the Terra billing project, Liz would not be able to do that. Only I could as an owner. And here's a little screenshot of what that looks like. So when I create my Terra billing project, I can add a user to the billing project, their user email in Terra, and I can say they are a owner, or if I check this checkbox, I'm saying they're an owner. If I leave it as is, they're just a user. So the question earlier about cloud billing accounts, one way to get around creating that cloud billing account and still being able to work in Terra is to actually have somebody who already has a Terra billing project give you a user access to their Terra billing project, so that you can create workspaces under their billing account. Okay, so we talked about the Terra billing project roles. Now let's talk about the workspace roles and what different roles we have and how you can share access. So when you click on that share button in the workspace dashboard that Liz showed you, there are a few options here. We have owner, you can share, give somebody owner access, writer access, reader access, and there are these little check boxes where you can say, I would also like for them to be able to share, or also would like for them to be able to compute. And so that's kind of the way the roles and permissions are set up for workspaces. And something that is, I would say, not super intuitive when people are just getting started is like, you're like, am I going to get charged for doing this stuff within this workspace? The person that gets charged is the owner of that Terra billing project for the workspace, right? Because costs are charged to the workspace billing project, not the user. So today in this workshop, we gave everybody access to our Terra workshop billing project. None of you are getting charged for any of the stuff that you're doing in Terra. We're taking those costs on. Okay. So something that is really useful when you're getting started and thinking about how are you going to manage access to your workspaces in Terra is using this feature called groups. So basically when you create a group, you have 2 different roles. You have the admin of the group and a member of the group. So maybe I have a lab and I'm the PI of the lab and I want all of the members of my lab to be a part of this group. So that whenever I'm working in Terra, I don't have to share each individual person. I don't have to share my workspace with each individual person in my lab. I can just share it with that group. And then if somebody leaves my lab, I just take them out of the group and they lose access to all those workspaces. So this is very helpful, especially as you start creating more and more workspaces. Do you have any questions? I wanted to check in before I continue.
Yes. So in our case, would we have, so we have in DS1 Africa, there's a number of other projects. Like I'm part of the camera project. Would camera be a group? Is that how they're going to do it? Or do we not know yet?
I don't know. I don't know how they're going to do it. But that is a way to do it, is to have like a camera group and have a workspace where the camera group has access to it to do their work. Does anyone else know the answer to that? Okay.
So I have one other question.
Yeah.
On the storage, is there a like a cost per GB or TB?
Yeah.
Cost per gig or terabyte?
Yeah. So there is, and the more data, the larger the data, yes, the more, I would say, yes, it'll cost more. And the rate, I don't know off the top of my head, but if maybe somebody can quickly.
Yeah, I was just wondering, it didn't show that. You had that little estimate window. It didn't say a cost per gig or terabyte.
Yeah, I think we try to do the math for you, so it's easy.
Okay.
Yeah, we try to do the math for you. But yeah, like I said, that's available on the Google Cloud's website. What the rate is.
Right. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. So you can also use groups in billing projects. So again, like if I want to make it really easy for folks in my lab, I have one billing project. I give my whole lab user access of my one billing project within using that group. Just share that group with my billing project, and then my entire group can make workspaces. Okay. So on this sharing and doing your work securely in Terra, we have this advanced feature called an authorization domain. And you can see here in this screenshot, this is what it looks like when you're creating a workspace. So I have my name, the billing project that I want to charge what I'm doing back to, the bucket location. So this is where I was mentioning the different regions where you can have your buckets, a description, and then here is this authorization domain. So this makes use of groups as well. What this is doing here is it's saying that I have these two groups, ASHG 18-dev and broad_product_team. If I create this workspace, what it's saying is you have to be a member of both of those groups, and I have to give you owner, reader, writer access to my workspace for you to be able to access it. So that's just like a more stringent way of controlling who can access your workspace. And this is handy, I would say later on, as you're really starting to do work in Terra, and it's something to know about. It's not something we recommend if you're just kind of testing out Terra, just getting started, to take advantage of. But it is a feature that we actually use within Terra to protect, controlled access data, for example, like TCGA or Target. We make use of these authorization domains to ensure that only people that have that access are able to access the workspace, even if somebody shares it with them. If they're not in that group, they can't get into the workspace. Okay, so here is the section where I'll talk a little bit about billing. And how it actually works. So how do you pay for costs when working in Terra? I mentioned earlier that a collaborator, I mentioned this one earlier, but a collaborator can grant you permission, can compute or a writer role or an owner role to a shared workspace, and your costs are covered by their billing project. As I said, that's what we're doing with you all today, is you all aren't getting charged. We're giving you permission to create workspaces and permission to perhaps a workspace that you can use. And if you give somebody permission to a workspace, like I said, there's different levels in which they can spend. The only thing to know about if you're giving somebody reader access to a workspace, what that only means is they can just read your workspace, and they can look at your data tables, and they can, the only way they can accrue a cost is if they actually download a file that is from your workspace's Google bucket. And that's when you would get charged for a reader using a workspace, your workspace. So that's just one thing I wanted to caveat. There's a way that you can turn on a feature so that you don't get charged if people are trying to download data from your workspace. And that's something that you can do by contacting our support team, and we can turn that feature on for you. Okay, so the owner of the existing Terra billing project can authorize you to use their billing project. We talked about that earlier. That's one way in which you don't have to go establish any cloud billing accounts to get started. And then you can use your own cloud billing. So the way that works is the next slide goes over that a little bit. The way that works is you can either use your own credit card or an institute's credit card or university credit card to directly go to Google and set up a relationship or get free credits. You can usually have to put a credit card or something like that down, and then you have the ability to do what you want in Terra. The other way is through a third-party reseller, and that they basically manage all of the stuff for you. And that's, I think, a way that this group is working out right now, is how to, what third-party reseller to use, and how will that work within the group. So those are kind of the main ways in which you can get started with the Google Cloud billing. And then there are a few steps once you actually have your billing account to connect it to Terra to get started. You have to connect it, like I showed earlier, to that Terra billing project to really get going. And we have instructions for how to do that. Are there any questions about this specific?
Yeah, I have a question related to the billing. So assume I have a billing account, but as I'm granting users the access to that billing account, is there any way I can put a quota so that user cannot just take away all the credit from that account? So is there any way I can specify the quota?
Oh, that's a really good question. So what the support team can do for you is you can reach out to the support team, and we can we can ask Google to decrease the amount of quota that you have to use in Terra. And that is one way in which you can kind of prevent yourself and this other person from, using too much too soon. And then in terms of doing that directly on the Google Cloud Console side, I'm not exactly sure.
So in Terra, we cannot configure like per user quota, correct?
No, not per user.
Okay.
That's a good idea, though. I like that.
Yeah, because if someone submits a very large job without knowing how much it's going to cost, it might burn up the account.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And we know that other NIH projects, for example, like Anvil, we know that they have asked for people that are just getting started, they've asked us to decrease their quota. Pamela, do you want to answer? Do you want to comment on any of this? Because Pamela actually helped them set it up.
Yeah, I believe they had a workspace for each user, and then they wanted the quotas decreased on each of those workspaces, but I'm not really sure how it would work if like you're trying to work in that workspace and you want to limit other users in that workspace, since the quotas are just for the whole workspace and not for each user.
That's a great point, Pamela. I forgot that they did that. So, right, each user of that of this project had their own workspace, and the support team went in and decreased the quotas, yeah, for each of these workspaces. And that's assuming that nobody else but that one user is using that workspace. So that's a way I think you could sort of have that per user quota decrease, and but not if you wanted to try to use that workspace yourself, then you would hit those same quotas. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you. Is that quota they used is per month or per year, how they set it up?
Pamela, do you want to answer?
I believe it's just total. Like, if we set the quota to 8 CPUs, then they only have the ability to use 8 CPUs at a given time. So it's not really per year or any amount of time.
All right, thank you.
Good questions.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can kind of hear you.
Hello, can you hear me? Is it?
Yes, that's better.
Okay, so the question is the following. I'm sorry, you may have given some hint to this, but for other NIH-funded research, right? At the moment, how is it going? Do they have like a single billing account, and then all the users, I would say the users, will be, I mean, all the actions taken by the users within the project will be billed will be counted against that single account under the NIH? Is that how it works?
That's a really good question. So the projects that I've worked on, usually a third-party reseller is managing whether it's one Google billing account or multiple Google billing accounts. And I believe usually there's some agreement between the reseller and like the program itself, like the management of the program on how you set it up and how you do the kind of cost accounting for everybody. So if anybody else that works on projects has any other specific answers, please chime in. But I actually don't know if they choose to use one Google billing account or if they do multiple. My guess would be multiple ones, but I don't actually know for a fact.
Yeah, because the question comes because there will obviously be multiple people connecting to the platform with the let's say with the Google account, but they're connecting to do things in relation to the project, not to their personal accounts. So if that is now linked to the billing account, reconciliation will be quite complicated. And that's what I'm trying to understand, how we go about it. We have multiple users, multiple people will be connecting, pulling the data here and there on the other interface that you showed earlier. And this costs money. And you're telling me that I have to link my Google account and I have to be able to, I have to create a Google billing account. So are we all going to go create Google billing accounts, or is there any way to link all that? This is where I get a bit lost. If there is any way you can help me with this, please.
Yeah, so the third-party reseller that the DSI Africa group determines to use, the third-party reseller will establish the Google billing accounts for folks, I believe, within the group, within the consortium. And on the Terra side, the way that looks is usually every user will have their own unique Terra billing project. So we demoed earlier how you can have one cloud billing account with multiple Terra billing projects, or different cloud billing accounts with unique Terra billing projects. Usually every user will have their own Terra billing project in these consortia groups and in terms of how things are usually set up. And that's so that people can see their spend against that Terra billing project. And usually they give you reports. The resellers are awesome at giving you data on like how much you're spending every month. So that's another thing that they provide, a service they provide. So I don't think that today I'm saying, you know, go put your credit card down. I think that there's probably still more to figure out within the leadership, I think, around how what resellers are going to be used. Christine, are you still on?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that Tiff, that's exactly right. There's several options for resellers for GCP and then also for Azure in the future. So I think we're still working with Nikki and others to figure out what's going to be the easiest thing to set up for everybody.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Roland, did that help?
Yeah, that helps. I'm sure that we will have to come up with some, because again, at the end of this training of the session, I am just trying to set and I'm sorry for the other people attending if I'm slowing down a little bit, but at the end of the day, we want to come out with a clear understanding of how to actually build up the project and connect it to the Terra system and get charged in a consistent way. And in the meantime, and this is still a bit confusing to me, but I think we can proceed. Maybe I will get some answers in the following slides, and of course I can always prepare some questions for later. I don't want to slow down there.
No, these are really good questions. I think you're spot on. It's something that needs to be figured out, and I think that is still happening. So, okay, so I'll just wrap up with looking at and revisiting our session goals. So I will go through these. What cloud vendors work with Terra? Think about it for a second. Okay, hopefully that came through. Google Cloud Platform and soon Azure. What costs money in Terra and how do you pay for it? A second to think about that. All right, compute, data storage, and egress. Those are the main ways in which you'll spend money in the cloud, and you pay with them through a Terra billing project that's linked to a cloud billing account. What is a Terra billing project and how is it connected with a workspace? All right, a Terra billing project is a feature that connects a cloud billing account and a workspace so that costs accrued in the workspace get paid for through that billing project. Okay, where can you see how much you've spent in Terra? Combination of the job history tab and the workspace dashboard. The source of truth will always be available in the Google Cloud Console. So you can always see for your workspace itself how much money you've accrued within the Google Cloud Console as well. Or a reseller will sometimes provide you with a report. Any recommendations for getting started with running workflows, cloud environments, and securely sharing workspaces? We recommend starting small. For workflows, run ones that you were interested in on one sample first, see how much it costs, then scale up. When you're done using a cloud environment, we recommend deleting it. You can adjust the parameters of the machine and see how much that's going to cost. And then finally, use groups to share your workspaces and your Terra billing projects with, and only share with folks you're comfortable with having the ability to spend money. And we talked about an advanced concept of reducing people's quotas for a workspace that they're using to somehow cap their ability to spend money. And that is through contacting the support team to do something like that. Okay, that's it. Any other questions? Okay, that's all for my presentation. I'll pass it back over to Liz.
All right, thank you, Tiffany.
You're welcome.
All right, so we're going to get started with the very first hands-on exercise that we're doing today. We're going to divide up into breakout rooms again, but this time just 2. And we're gonna work until 5:25, and then we'll come back to the main room, or that's also 10:25 if you're on East Coast time. Let me make these breakout rooms really fast. Okay. All right. All right. All right, so I'm gonna open up the rooms and just give our TAs a moment to get into the rooms, and then we will get started with our hands-on exercise. Okay. Let's see, Anton, are you still here? Okay, for those who are still in the main room, have you been assigned to your breakout room? Having any problems? All right, I'm gonna head over to the breakout room, and please join your breakout room if you haven't yet. Hello, hi everyone. Oh,
Hi.
hi. Thanks for having me. All right, so we have TAs Pamela and Kaylee in this room. Just making sure that I didn't mess up and throw other TAs in here. Everybody should have a TA today. So, okay, all right. So in the next 20 minutes, we're gonna get started learning a little bit more about Jupyter Notebooks and creating custom computers. So the goal of the next couple of exercises that we're gonna do over today and tomorrow is to understand how to bring data from different locations into a Jupyter Notebook for analysis. And to do this, we're gonna use a featured workspace. So I'm going to share my screen again here. And I'm going to demo how to find the tutorial workspace that we're going to be using today. Can everyone see that screen okay?
Yes, I can.
Yes.
Great. Okay. So we will be posting in the chat a direct link to the workspace we're going to use, but this is how you can find it yourself too. So you're going to navigate to alwazi.terra.bio, go to the main menu, go back down to that library section and into the showcase. And the tutorial workspace we're going to be using is actually one that is in this getting started section here. It's this notebook tutorials. So I'm going to select that and I'm going to go into this workspace. All right. So why doesn't, we can go ahead and post the link in the chat if we haven't already to this workspace. And let's see, Pamela, if you don't mind doing that. Oh, thanks, Kaylee. And okay. Okay, so the next thing we need to do in order to actually work with this workspace, we need to make a copy of it because most of you or all of you actually should see up here that this is a read-only workspace. I'm actually an owner on this workspace, so it doesn't say read-only here, but you should see read-only on the workspace. So in order for us to actually run the exercises, the first thing we need to do is make a copy, an editable copy of the workspace. So I'm gonna demo this, so just watch for a few minutes so I can give you some important information, and then I'll give you a minute to clone your own workspace. So to clone this workspace, I'm gonna go to this vertical 3-dot icon underneath my cloud environment widget and select clone. Now, Tiffany pointed out some useful information about this dialog box. This should look familiar, but there are only two things that we need to change in this dialog box right now: the workspace name and the billing project that we want to run the workspace on. For the workspace name, very important, we recommend that you append your initials and today's date. The reason is because because we're all working off the same billing project today, we want to have a unique name for our workspace. Otherwise, you're going to get an error that says someone has already taken this name. So usually appending initials and the date is enough, but if you still get that error, maybe put a little suffix on it, like test or something. The second reason we do this is because it will make finding your workspace a lot easier. If you go into Terra later on and want to copy a bunch of other workspaces, by just having your initials and the date, you can easily search for the workspace that you're working with. So that's step one. And step two is to change the billing project. So we have a billing project for you today that everyone has signed up for that's called Workshop DSI Africa 2204. We can paste that in the chat as well so that you don't forget, but that's the name of it. And after you've filled in these two spaces, you can hit Clone Workspace. And it just takes a few seconds, and then I'm going to show you how the dashboard looks different once I've made a clone of it. So now you can see, now this is my clone, and you can see that I am an owner on this workspace. And you can also see date created up at the top here. So go ahead and take a minute right now to make a clone of your own workspace, and definitely ask questions if you run into any problems while doing this. I think I made. I'd have had some detailed instructions. Oh, nope, not for this one. Okay. The question in the chat is, did you say if we should leave the bucket location as default? Yes, we don't need to worry about the bucket location. You can leave it as default for these exercises. Thanks for the question. Okay, so there's a little bit of slowness maybe going on the platform right now. You can, if it seems to be getting stuck, I assume that is the problem you're facing at the actual popping up of this dialog box here? Yeah, okay. It could be because we have a lot of people cloning the workspace right now between the two groups. Maybe you could also try refreshing the workspace and seeing if it can pop up faster. Any improvements, or are people still seeing the spinning wheel? Paraloading bucket data, location data. So for the error, Fred, let's just make sure you didn't need to change. I saw that error message too. Okay, interesting. Is your bucket location set for this default?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Well, let's keep an eye out. You said you were able to still successfully clone the workspace, even with that error message up.
And now it says it already exists.
If it says it already exists, you might need to, like I said, you append your initials and the date and maybe put the word test like the, here, I'll just show an example, test like this. Something that just makes it more unique because someone else might have your same initials today. That definitely happens. Great, okay. All right. Can we just do a quick show of hands? How many people now have a clone of their workspace? All right, I see 10 people, 11. And a thumbs, great.
Can you come again with the instructions on the name and renaming the workspace, please?
Yes, absolutely. So we're gonna, we just need to give the workspace a unique name. So really, you can definitely call the workspace anything you want to make it unique. By default, it sets up copy, but we recommend that you keep the original name, but append your initials. So like, for example, I have LK in here for Liz Kiernan, and then the day's date. 2022-04-12 is the way that I wrote it in here. You can write the date however you feel comfortable. This is a way for you to be able to find your workspace, say when we come back tomorrow. So this is just kind of good practice because sometimes people make a lot of copies of different workspaces and it can be useful for finding workspaces later on. But you can give this any unique name you want. It just has to be unique. So if you leave that default copy in there, you might get an error because sometimes other people do that too. So, so it just has to be a unique name. Okay, all right. I'm not seeing necessarily, oh, there are still some more people raising hands. So I think people are still working. Okay. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and keep going. If you are running into more issues with cloning it, reach out in the chat too, and maybe the TAs can help troubleshoot a little bit. And TAs, let me know if we need to stop, if it's just too many questions about it. Or anyone can let me know if we need to stop at any time. But, okay. All right, so let me just give you a little rundown on this workspace. So this is one of our tutorial workspace. And again, anytime you come to a tutorial workspace dashboard, you're going to see instructions for what that workspace does. This workspace in particular is to get you up and started with Jupyter Notebooks as an application. And it allows you to take in data from different locations, a data table, a workspace bucket, and a Teradata library, and work with that data in a Jupyter Notebook. If you want to see step-by-step instructions come back to this workspace after the workshop, there are step-by-step instructions for each part, as well as directions for making the clone and copying. So this is a useful bit of information if you want to come back to the workspace. All right, now in order to launch our Jupyter Notebook today, we actually need to create a custom cloud environment. In other words, a custom computer in the cloud. And we can do that by using this cloud environment widget in the upper right-hand corner here. So if you're following along, what we're going to do is we're going to select this cloud environment widget, and then we're just going to select the create button next to the use default environment. So go ahead and do that now. Just select create. And we're going to come back to this widget in tomorrow to explore more features about it and explain it a little bit further. But for right now, we're just creating that default environment because that's what's going to get us up and running on these Jupyter Notebooks. And after you've selected create, you should see the circular arrows and it should say creating, and it also gives you that cost estimate for running your cloud environment. Okay. All right. So the reason we're creating this right off the bat is because it takes a few minutes to set up a virtual computer. So while that's setting up, I'm going to go to the data page on this workspace and just show you a couple of features, differences between this and the last workspace that we looked at. So I mentioned that this workspace is designed to show you how to bring in data from different locations. So there are a couple of data tables that are already created here. You can see we have one that's called BigQuery. This actually holds a query from that 1000 Genomes Repository that I showed you earlier and that we're going to be working with again. There's a cohort table that lists a cohort that was exported from that repository. Currently, you can see that there's just one cohort in here. We're going to be adding to this table today. And then there's this sample table. So this sample table hosts all kinds of different participants with different clinical phenotypic data in the data table. So today we're going to be exploring these different phenotypic data in the Jupyter Notebook. The workspace data table has a couple of reference files, but we're actually not using these files for today's exercises. And then if I go into the files section, the only file, unlike the last workspace that we looked at, the only files that we see in our Workspace Google bucket are the notebooks that are in this workspace. So the notebooks are hosted in our Google bucket, Workspace Google bucket. And we can also see them from the notebooks page as well here. There are 5 different Jupyter Notebooks in this workspace. There's a Jupyter Notebooks 101. This is a useful tool. If you're brand new to working in Jupyter Notebooks, you can try this out after the workshop, go through it. It has a lot of useful information in it about just working in Jupyter Notebooks and working in Jupyter Notebooks on Terra. There's also, the 3 that we're going to be focusing on today are these option 1, option 2, and option 3 notebooks. And we are not going to be getting to the option 4 public data and BigQuery. Again, that's something you can come back to after the workshop. I'll talk a little bit more about that workspace in a bit, or that notebook in a bit. Okay. All right, so hopefully everybody has their cloud environment running. Did anyone have any problems with starting up their cloud environment?
I think mine says running.
Okay, great. Running is what we want to see. If it's still creating, it should be done pretty momentarily. Okay. Okay. All right, so let me go ahead and show you the next steps here that we're going to do. So our cloud environment is running, and that means that we can actually run code now in our Jupyter Notebook. So when you kick off this cloud environment, what's going to happen is Terra is actually set up to automatically pull Jupyter Notebooks into your cloud computer. So it's making a copy from your workspace bucket where these files live and copying them into your cloud environment, your virtual computer, so that you can use them. So if you're following along, let's select this option 1. This is a notebook that's intended to help us bring in data that's hosted in a workspace data table. You can open this by going to the open option. And this is again going to allow us to actually run code in this Jupyter Notebook. Okay. Now, because we're going to be exploring how to bring data tables into this notebook, I'm actually going to open up my data page in a new tab on my computer. And I wanted to show you a quick way that you can do that without having to close out of your Jupyter Notebook. If you go up to the title of your workspace, you'll notice when you hover over it that it's a link. You can right click on that and open your workspace up in a new tab. And this will allow you to go back to the dashboard or go to other pages while you're working in the notebook. The reason I want to do this is because I wanted to highlight that for this first workspace, this first notebook, Jupyter Notebook we're running, we're pulling in data from a data table that's been pre-created, this sample table. So this is all the data. This whole table is all the data we're going to be pulling into our Jupyter Notebook to explore today. Okay, so now I'm back on my Jupyter Notebook. When you come into these tutorial notebooks, you'll have an overview of what this data is and how to kind of get up and running with these notebooks. So the data that we're looking at today that's in that sample table is actually synthetic data, but it's based on real data from the 1000 Genomes Project. Again, it's all phenotypic data as well, so you won't find any links to the actual data files for those participants in the table. Okay, now anytime that we are running a tutorial Jupyter Notebook, we do recommend that you clear any existing outputs that are in the notebook. Sometimes when you clone workspaces with a Jupyter Notebook, outputs are already in the notebook for you to look at. But if you're going to be running the code, it's useful to clear the existing outputs because then you can see what the code does in real time. So we're going to clear the output together by going up to the main menu. There's a kernel option at the top of the Jupyter Notebook, and we're going to say restart and clear output. This is going to restart our kernel and clear any existing outputs. Okay. You'll also notice at the top of the Jupyter Notebook that it tells you what the kernel is. This is a Python 3 notebook. We're also going to be working in some R notebooks too to give you a flavor for both of them. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how you can run code in these Jupyter Notebooks. So we have some example code here. If everyone wants to just watch, and then I'll give you time to practice this too. Where it says install packages in section 2.3, there's some commented out code. That means it's not actually going to run anything, but it's a useful way that you can just practice running a code block. So what I want you to notice is when we run this code in real time, you're going to notice that these brackets get a number in it. The number inside these brackets keeps track of the order in which you run these code blocks, which can be very helpful, particularly for notebooks where you need to run code in order. That's going to be the majority of our tutorial notebooks. So to run this code block, I can click inside the code block. And then there's two ways, there's actually more than two, but there's a couple ways you can run the code. You can click inside a block and click run, or you can do a shorthand and click shift return. And that will run your code block. And now you'll notice that there's a 1 inside next to my code block because I just ran it. So go ahead and run this first code block just to try it out. Okay. All right. Yeah. Did someone have a question? Sorry. Okay. Go ahead.
Sorry, but the option 1 data that I take, it opens, but in Google on Google Cloud Platform. I don't understand.
Let's see. So, sorry, did you say that? What are you trying to do? What opened in the Google Cloud Platform?
I went down to the files and then it's the list of notebooks.
Okay. Yes. All right. So, when you run a notebook, you don't want to access it from the file section because these are just the actual files. You can't actually run a Jupyter Notebook file without having Jupyter installed. What Terra does is it automatically copies the files in this notebook folder into your cloud environment. So to access them, we're going to go to this Notebooks tab here. And you're going to open it from here, not from the Files page. If you wanted to download these Jupyter Notebooks, you could do that from the Files page. So say you wanted to download and modify a Jupyter Notebook, you could do that from that Files section in your data page. But to actually run the notebook, you're going to come into this Notebooks page and select option 1.
Awesome. Perfect. I got it.
That's a great question. So, and hopefully that kind of gives a sense of where things are stored and how this operates a little bit. All right. Okay. So after you've had a little practice running that code block, the next thing that we're going to do in the Jupyter Notebook is install some necessary packages that we need in order to communicate with our workspace. So remember, we're running this Jupyter Notebook in our virtual computer. Terra has automatically copied it over to our computer. And now we need to tell our computer where to find the information in our workspace in Terra on the cloud. So to do that, we're going to import several packages, including one that's called FIS. FIS is a Python language and package suite that allows you to actually interact with Terra workspace variables. So for those who are heavy into coding, FIS is a handy one to use if you want to access Terra programmatically. For the rest of us, just know that it's what's going to allow us to bring our data table into the notebook. So go ahead and run this code block again by clicking into it and hitting Shift Return. It's going to take a few minutes or seconds, not minutes, to run. All right. The next thing we're going to do then, after that is loaded, there's a little information here about the different phenotypic data that's in that samples data table. But the next thing we're going to do is in section 3.1, we're going to set some environment variables. So as I mentioned, FIS allows us to communicate with our Terra workspace. And now we can actually grab certain features about our workspace in this Jupyter notebook. We can find out what the name of our workspace is, what its Google bucket is. So this is useful for when you're trying to manipulate data between your cloud environment and your workspace bucket. So go ahead and click into there and run that section 3.1. And you'll notice that the output on this is, it'll list out the billing project you're actually working on. We're all working on the same billing project today. The name of your workspace, which will be unique to you, and the Google bucket storage, which will also be unique to your workspace. Okay. All right. The next thing we're going to do is load the phenotypic data. So we're going to do that. It's going to load the actual information that's in our data table. So we're going to read that data into this Jupyter notebook using a software called Pandas. It allows us to make a data frame of the data that's in our workspace data table. So go ahead and run these two code blocks where it says load phenotype data. And when you do that, the output that you'll see is a data table, and you'll notice that the data table actually contains the same samples and information that your samples data table contained. So it's pulling that data, all the information from this table into this workspace. Okay, so the next thing we can do then is explore this clinical and phenotypic data to look for covariates and see how they're tracking, how the different variables are tracking together. This can be useful for GWAS analysis because you don't want any two variables to track too closely together. So in order to explore this data, we're going to use some different plots. So we have in section 4.1 some code that just allows us to set up the plotting functions. So go ahead and run the code in section 4.1. Nothing will be outputted from this section. You should just see that it ran successfully by having a number next to it. There's three different kinds of plots that we're going to use to explore this data: a univariate, a bivariate, and a box plot. In the interest of time today, I'm just going to show you this univariate distribution. And this is where we're going to hold off until tomorrow. We'll continue going through it. So under univariate distribution in 4.2, we're going to make this univariate distribution of one variable, LDL. So you can go ahead and run that block. You might get some pink message after you run it. That's okay. Usually error messages come up in white. So don't worry if you see pink necessarily. All right. And so you can see a plot now of the distribution of LDL across all of the different participants. So what you can do is change this variable around. That data table had a lot of different phenotypic values. So you can copy this code in the code blocks below. You can change these values to a different phenotypic variable that you want to explore. I just changed it to HDL. If you want to know what values are available, again, you can go back up to the table and grab one of these different phenotypes to explore. So I'm actually going to leave it there for today. We are going to pick back up on this notebook tomorrow morning, but hopefully this gives you a little flavor for starting the cloud environment. Because we're going to be using the same cloud environment tomorrow, all we need to do is pause our cloud environments before we return to the main room. So I'm going to go up to the cloud environment widget and select the pause where it says, and if I hover over it, it'll say stop cloud environment. So I'm going to stop that cloud environment.
So Liz, I have a quick question for you.
Yeah.
So if we were to share workspaces with users, are we expecting the users having to set up like their individual cloud environments each time? I thought when we share it, they would have access to the environment and they wouldn't have to go through this process.
That is correct. So so there is one custom cloud environment per workspace. If you want people working on your workspace, they can create this custom cloud, and you can create this custom cloud environment, and they can use it in your workspace. If you want to change it though, right now we're running Jupyter Notebooks. You can run other applications as well, like our studio. We can delete this cloud environment and create a new one for our studio if we wanted to use our studio. So you can delete these cloud environments or make new cloud environments for the workspace. And you can save the files that you generate from your notebook onto a persistent disk, which I was going to go more into tomorrow still. But it's basically like a flash drive that you can remove and plug back into your virtual computer as you make modifications to your computer.
Right, but if we were to say share this workspace with someone, the user still has to come in and create these cloud environments individually, or no? That's where I get a little bit confused.
Yeah, no, they don't. So it depends on, there's one per workspace. So if someone actually has access to your workspace, if they're not making a copy of your workspace.
Right, okay.
Yeah, they will have access to your cloud environment. So right now, if you were to share your workspace and give someone compute power, they could come back in and turn that cloud environment back on.
Okay, all right, yeah. Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, okay, so I know I kind of left you hanging here today, probably with a lot of other questions related to this, but we will have time to continue this tomorrow. So I'm gonna go ahead and suggest that people move back into the main room. And I'll send out a message for everyone to kind of regroup together just so that we can talk about the game plan for tomorrow. So thank you all for trying this out today. And I'll see you back in the main room. Thanks everyone for jumping back into the main room. I'm just gonna go jump into room 2 really fast to make sure I'm not closing the room right in the middle of a crucial moment for everybody. And I'll be right back.
Notebooks with like GitHub when we are sitting on Terra for version control and stuff like that. And if we are to work in collaboration on a notebook, so that all of us do not keep how do you see that? I'm trying to figure out. We have a notebook where we are putting together some code. Are we going to be using an external version control system like GitHub? And each of us will maintain a copy of the notebook, which means then incurring extra cost. I mean, the same cost for all of us, since to run the notebook, you need a cloud environment. Or is it that we can have each of us an account and then have access to the same notebook using the same compute environment through the notebook sharing option? You see what I mean? When I share my notebook, do I share the entire compute, give access to the compute that notebook belongs to, is sitting on, or am I only sharing a copy of the file?
You're muted, Liz.
You can't tell from my enthusiastic hand waving what I'm saying. Thank you all for coming back into the main room. They're just wrapping up a question in the other room right now. We can take some additional questions here, but I do respect your time, and we said we would end at 5:30. So for those who need to hop off, please feel free to hop off, and we're going to rejoin again tomorrow at 8 a.m., 3 p.m., and get started and pick off where we left off with those exercises. There's a question about when the recording will be available. That's usually about within 2 weeks after the workshop. We have it posted. We do edit out a few things on the recording just to speed some things up as we're demoing. But yeah, so it should be up pretty soon. And thank you, anyone who's saying goodbye, thank you for coming today. Any other questions? Okay, well, we'll stick around until the next group kind of, regroups with us. But thank you all again for coming today. And yeah, well, we're looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. Oh, Fred, you asked a great question. I'm going to look up this. I'm going to look more into this answer for tomorrow. I'm not actually sure what the answer to this. Pamela, do you know about the kernels? How many you can spin up at once? I'm going to have to look into that, but we will have an answer for that tomorrow. Hey everyone, welcome back to the main room. Okay. All right, welcome back. Thank you all. I was sorry to interrupt you because I saw you all were very engaged in questions, but we appreciate you coming back. There will be more time for questions tomorrow. We just wanted to wrap up together just to see if there were any final questions as a group, but I think you all have kind of hopefully gotten some of them answered already in your breakout room. And I wanted to let everyone know that we're going to be rejoining together. There is a different Zoom for day 2, but we'll be joining again tomorrow at 8 a.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. GMT +3. And yeah, we really appreciate you all coming out today and doing these exercises with us. Oh, and thank you, Anton, for the reminder. If you haven't paused your cloud computer yet, your cloud environment, please make sure you pause that overnight, and we'll come back to those tomorrow. Let's see, and if the TAs can stay on just for a second after, do you have time?
Will you share the recording today, so that we can start reviewing some of the elements? Because I would say I was not 100% on everything, so I would like to rewind and kind of catch on, so especially the billing part.
So we usually post the recording about 2 weeks after the workshop, because we do need to go in and make some minor edits to it. What do you think, Tiff? Is there
I think we could maybe share it, Roland. We can just share it with you or whoever else wants us to share it with them, just for tomorrow's sake, and then we'll post an edited version of it in a few weeks.
Great.
Exactly.
So Roland, can you leave your email in the chat? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
I just pushed that now.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, Samuel. I was not able to participate in the activities because I didn't have a billing account also. I don't know if that will be done after before tomorrow.
Go ahead. Oh, I was gonna say, Samuel, sorry. So it's siddi@aphrc.org.
Yes, please.
Okay, yes, we will get you added. Sorry about that.
Was there anyone else in the room who wanted the link to the video recording up?
Just a question, sorry.
Yeah.
You said we'll use a different link tomorrow to join the meeting, right?
Yes, there's a separate Google Calendar invite.
Oh, it's okay. No problem. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. So shall we drop out? Are we done for today?
Yes, you're done. You're welcome to leave. I'm just looking to see if there's anyone else who wants the video shared with them. So I've got a couple on here.
Okay, that's fine. So thank you very much. It was very informative. And there's a lot of questions that will come for sure. That's why I want to replay actually the video today, because I'm very much interested about how to structure the billing and also the table. So thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thanks. Bye.
Okay, for those remaining, if you don't mind, I'm just going to move you over to the waiting room, unless you have further questions about today's workshop. And okay, well, thank you all again.
There we go. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with our Jupyter Notebooks hands-on exercise. I'm going to try to pause so that people can follow along. So everyone should be trying to do all the things that I'm doing. Please feel free to either unmute yourself or to post in the chat if you have any questions or if you need me to slow down. And as Liz said, at 25 after the hour, we will go back to the main room for some wrap-up questions and answers. So we're going to start by finding a specific workspace. So your goal for today is to use Jupyter Notebooks applications to analyze some cloud data that's organized in various ways within this Terra workspace. So you'll see how you can access data using Jupyter Notebooks when that data is organized in various different ways. To run these notebooks, we need to set up a custom virtual computer in the cloud, and we'll explore in more detail tomorrow all of the different options that make that a customizable machine, we're going to use the default settings today. And we'll see more details about what kinds of settings are available later on. I might just briefly show them so you have an idea. But in the meantime, let's start by navigating to the Notebooks Quick Start tutorial workspace. So we can post a link to it in the chat, or you can also follow along. You can find it exactly like this. So if you click on the main menu on the front page and go to the Showcase section, you could actually either type in something like Notebooks or Quick Start and you would find it, but it's also the one that comes up when you click on this filter. So I'm going to start by clicking into the public version of this workspace. So this is a read-only public version of the workspace. You can see right here, it says workspace is locked and read-only. I can't do things, for example, like share because I am not one of the owners of this workspace. This is where you would find the owners of the workspace, so you could send them a message if you so desired. You can find the location of the Google bucket for the public workspace. Whether or not you have access to that bucket is a separate question, but in many cases, you can copy things from public workspaces by just copying the address of the Google bucket of that workspace. We are going to clone our own version of the workspace. So everyone should do exactly as I'm doing right now. Go ahead and click on this three-dot menu button in the top right of the workspace view and click clone. And make sure to give your workspace clone some sort of unique name. So I'm just going to call it Iluwazi Demo. So you'll need to select the correct billing project. And don't worry about selecting an authorization domain. So authorization domains are additional security badges for workspaces, and we don't need them for this current demonstration. So you don't strictly need them ever, but sometimes it's important to use them when you have protected data. So now I am in an exact clone of the workspace, and the same should be true for everyone else. I'm going to pause for a moment just to let everyone catch up. And if you could kindly raise your hand in the Zoom chat, just use the raise hand feature to say when you have successfully cloned your workspace, then I will move on.
Anton, I think two people have mentioned that they're using one screen and it's hard to follow. So I don't know if you could demo the activity first and then have it give people a minute to then copy maybe. Would that be helpful, folks?
That's what I wanted to do right now. So I'm going to take a break for about 2 minutes or so. And if anybody has any questions on how to catch up to where we are, then feel free to unmute yourself or post in the chat. So just to recap, all you need to do for now is to find the Notebooks Quick Start workspace and to clone it using the three-dot button at the top right.
Hello, this is Indresh. I cannot clone. It's just taking forever. It's just in a loading mode as I hit the clone. So looks like there might be delay because a lot of users are hitting the system.
It might be. You could try refreshing the page and doing it again. But yes, it should just work. And sometimes it takes a little bit longer than other times.
Yeah, I tried refreshing a few times already.
No luck.
It cloned, but I get that error. Is that normal? Is that fine?
You got an error message, but you are looking at a clone of the workspace.
Yeah.
That should be fine.
I checked my email as the owner, but it says error loading bucket location data.
That should be okay. I think we've seen that before, but that should be okay.
I got the same error here, but it looks like the workspace was cloned. But yeah, I can see the name I gave. Yeah.
Got it.
So can I assume that everyone has successfully cloned their workspace?
Yes, success is my side.
Excellent. Okay, so let's take a quick tour through our new workspace clone. You'll notice, first of all, that the name has changed of the workspace. So first of all, in the beginning, it will be the name of the billing project that you used. And then after that will be the full name of the workspace. So it's kind of cut off here, but if you look all the way to the end, it would say Ilwazi demo. I am also now listed as the owner of this workspace. You will also notice if you compare the Google bucket to the bucket address of the public version, that this is a new Google bucket. So again, we have dedicated Google buckets for every unique workspace. Whether you create a workspace from scratch or every time you clone one, you will create a separate bucket. Once you are in a workspace to which you have owner or writer permission, then you can do several things. I'm sorry?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes.
And, so when we clone a workspace, so, and then it create a new Google bucket.
Yes.
And the location of the data. And so, yeah, I knew we are going to use a new computation facilities, but what about the storage of the data? If that, if this project or workspace attached with data.
So what happens with data that was in the Google bucket of the workspace that you cloned from?
Yes.
So when you clone, it creates an empty Google bucket. So the data does not move over with the Google bucket. You would have to copy it yourself. What does move over is metadata that comes with the data tab. And I'll go over that in a little bit more detail in just a second. Before we get started, I do want to launch the cloud environment because it takes a couple of minutes for it to spin up. So we can keep talking while it's doing that. We'll start by doing this. So just so everyone understands, the workspace is designed to help you analyze different kinds of data and depending on where they exist. And this data tab is going to be what helps us organize where those locations are. In order to do anything—
Quick question, I don't know if that will be taking us back, but I get the error message that you need a billing project to clone a workspace.
Have you been added to a billing project? Do you know?
No, I just did the registration and I don't know if there is another way to be added on a billing project.
Samuel, if you put your Terra account in the chat, then Kaylee can add you to the billing project so that you can actually select it and clone the workspace.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
So we're going to go ahead and click create. So I'll give everyone a moment to go to their windows and do this. Just go ahead and click on this cloud environment widget that's at the top right of your screen and click create. And this is the default environment. So everyone should go ahead and do this. I'll do this in just 1 second. I just want to point out that when we talk about how this is a customizable environment, you can create a non-default environment where you will get a whole bunch of options for things like CPUs and memory and also application configurations. So the default one is the one that we'll be using. It includes a version of Python and a version of R, as well as a version of the Genome Analysis Toolkit. And there are other options, and we'll look at those in more detail tomorrow. So for the meantime, just go ahead and click Create. And by doing that, you have requisitioned a virtual machine in the cloud that will be running according to those default parameters. It's going to take a couple of minutes for it to spin up so that you can actually run computations on it. And you'll be able to tell once this icon turns into a pause icon, and this word creating switches to the word running. So while we're waiting for that to spin up, I'm just going to take a quick tour through the workspace. And the thing that I want to make sure to show everyone, since I know there were a lot of questions about how sharing actually works on Terra, is the sharing function. So once you are in a workspace to which you have owner access, for example, a workspace you just cloned, now you are able to use the share options. And the way that you would do that is by just adding a person's email. It should be the email that they use for their Terra login. If you use a different email, or if there's a typo in the email, you'll be able to add them, but they'll kind of, there'll be a little note that says pending underneath their, underneath that user. So that's how you can tell that it hasn't quite worked. So you can either add a individual, or you can add groups, and you can share the workspace with those people with a variety of different access levels. So there is reader level, there's writer level, there's owner level. So owners are able to do things like share the workspace with others. Writers are able to do things like run computations, and readers can't run computations, but they can look inside of everything.
Is the share option, where is the share option?
Where is the share option?
Yes.
It's in the, right below the clone button. So in the 3-dot button.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And yeah, so you can give people specific can share or can compute privileges as well. And when you do that, you copy the entire workspace, or I'm sorry, you give access to the entire workspace to that individual person. There are other ways to share things from a Terra workspace. For example, by simply exporting it to another workspace. And you can do that with data, or I should say you can do that with metadata. You can do that with notebooks. So I can click on this notebook and I can say, copy this to another workspace. So if I didn't want to give someone access to a workspace, but I wanted to share a notebook with them, there's a very easy way to do that. If they do already have a workspace that you can send it to. You can also, of course, just download the notebook file and share it manually like that.
A quick question.
Yes, please.
So can I share with a unregistered user by just their email, or user need to be registered before?
You would need to be registered. They simply wouldn't be able to see it in any way.
Okay, thank you.
Anton, do they get a notification? Like if you add somebody who's not registered, do they still give you a notification, like send a notification email to the person who hasn't registered yet? Because I remember that used to be a feature.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I know that when you try to add a person who is not registered, it just says pending under their name forever.
Got it.
So hopefully everyone's cloud environment is now running.
There is no not R notebook yet. R notebook.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, it's running.
It's running? Fabulous.
I'm saying there is no R notebook yet.
So these are Python notebooks. Is that, did
I think what he's asking is that how about for our studio, or if you want to run our scripts?
So if you want to,
exactly.
if you want to use R in general, it is included in the default environment, and I'll show you how to use R inside of a Jupyter notebook. You can also use RStudio. You would use a separate application configuration, and you would be able to launch an instance of RStudio. So it would look different from what we're about to do because we're going to open a Jupyter notebook. So can I ask, was your question about using RStudio specifically, or just about using R code?
First, just about using R code.
Oh, okay. I'll show you how to do that right now. So I'm going to click on
so maybe just before you continue, I'm curious, can you like add more applications to your cloud environment after you set it up with the default configuration?
The applications that are currently supported are Jupyter, Galaxy, and RStudio. I think it is possible to add other applications with a little bit of help from us.
Yeah, you can also bring your own like Docker containers if you've used Dockers before that have whatever software tools that you want to use. You can actually bring those to the cloud environment and use that, or you can even bring an initialization script to bring stuff that you might need root access to the machine to install. You can have a script that you can bring and set up on the machine as well. Does that help?
Yeah, it does. It does help. Thanks.
Can I ask, I'm just curious, when you ask about other applications, are you talking about ones with their own user interface? Or just their own code base?
Could be with user interface, but it could also just be command line applications that are required by your analysis.
Okay. Yes, and we probably won't get to showing you how to access the command line terminal today, but I'll show you how to do that tomorrow as well. So everyone should go ahead and click on the notebook titled Option 1, Data in a Workspace Data Table. And what we're going to do is click Open, and this will open it in an editable mode. This playground mode is kind of a safety feature for people who are working on the same notebook in the same workspace so that people don't overwrite one another. Both the edit view, which you get when you click Open, and the playground mode are settings where you can run computations. So once I click Open, which I'm only able to do because my cloud environment is running, then I can see my entire notebook. And the notebook consists of code cells and markdown cells. So here's an example of a markdown cell. You can tell right here whether or not the cell is supposed to be markdown or code. This particular notebook is written in Python. So you can see right here that the kernel type is Python. If you want to switch your kernel type to an R kernel, you would do that in this menu. So in the kernel menu, I would switch to R. It thinks about it for a little bit, and now it's ready to run R code. So if I were to try to run one of these cells, it would be very confused because this is not R script. So I'll switch back to Python, and now it's happy. So that's how you can run either R or Python within any of these Jupyter notebooks. I'll also point out that we have this very nice active table of contents implemented in our Jupyter notebooks. So these are clickable. You can go to any one of these. And also, when you run a cell, these will turn to red to let you know that cells in these sections are in queue to be run. So I'm going to go ahead and click Run All. So this is also a very useful menu. In the cell menu, you can run either the entire notebook, which is very often useful. You can also run all of the cells below the cell that has been selected or above the cell that has been selected. This is also where you would go to clear your outputs down here. So you could clear the outputs. Either you could clear all the outputs in the notebook, or you could clear the outputs of the current cell. So I'm going to click run all. Oops, run all. So you could see very quickly it flashed red over here, but those finished very quickly. And there, it went through the entire notebook all at once and just finished it all up. So the purpose of the 3 notebooks in this workspace is to show you how data can be grabbed from different locations. This is the notebook that grabs data from the data tab. And so let's go really quickly through what the cells do, and then in a few minutes, we'll rejoin the main group. And tomorrow you'll see how to grab data from other locations like the Workspace Google Bucket or an external consortium. So first we import some packages. In this cell, we do something called setting environment variables, which is just a system we've implemented in our notebooks that allows the notebook to look at its own workspace. So this is how the notebook knows to look within the bucket associated with its own workspace. We verify that we've captured the environment variables by printing these out. So you can see that I'm definitely pointing at the right billing project and the right workspace. And this is also the address of the bucket. So now what we're going to do is we're going to grab the table from over here. So we're going to grab our sample table. That's this table right here. We're going to store it in this variable called sample name, and we'll read out the top 6 rows of that table. And so you can see we have successfully brought in the data from the data tab. So I'm going to hurry a little bit in the interest of time. Once you've done all of that, in this cell, we define a few useful functions for generating these statistical visualizations, and you can actually generate them on the fly with whatever data is available in that set of data. So there I changed HDL to LDL or LDL to HDL. So here's an example of a univariate distribution. Here's an example of a bivariate distribution. And here's an example of a box plot. And if we had a little bit more time right now, what we would do is just play around with these different variables. So what I would have said is to go into the table and look at some of the different variables that you can generate visualizations about, and just play around and create some of your own visualizations. So feel free to do that on your own time, and we can also try it again tomorrow. So just before we go back, I want to make sure everyone knows that they should click pause on their cloud environment. At the end of the workshop tomorrow, we'll show you how to delete your cloud environment. But since we're going to be using this exact same cloud environment tomorrow, then we might as well not delete it, but we should pause it, because otherwise we'll be running at 7 cents an hour all night for no reason. So once you're done playing around, make sure you click pause, and then we can head back to the main room.
Okay. So I have a quick question, sorry, before we...
Yes, please.
I actually went through, created kind of a notebook. I created a demo or a test notebook. I can't edit it. I guess this is okay because maybe of some settings, but I went ahead and then I created a second, workspace, and just delete it because I was trying to delete it and it looks like I can't delete it. I cannot delete. I cannot delete the persistent disk. Okay, so I have to delete the entire workspace, the cloud, before actually, for anything to happen. This is interesting. Okay, sorry. It was about how to pause and how to delete my workspace. I went to pause it and it wasn't really showing me. The button was actually disabled. That's what I wanted to say.
So do you mean this button over here?
No, yeah, I wasn't exactly there. I went to the, how did I even get there?
Or did you go over here?
Yeah, yes.
One of those two. So I'll just quickly answer both. So this is a way to delete the workspace. If you're the owner, you should be able to do that with no problem. There's a little safety feature here where you have to type out the word delete workspace just to be sure that you actually want to do that. Or you can also go to your cloud environment. So this is a separate question. That's the way to delete the workspace, which would delete the Google bucket for that workspace. If you want to talk about deleting the runtime or the persistent disk that's associated with that cloud environment runtime, you would do that under your, not under your profile because your profile is this specific location, but under your name, under cloud environments, you can find all of the runtime environments that you have going, all of the cloud environments that you have going, and all of the persistent disks associated with those. And you should be able to delete them, assuming that they're not running.
Yeah, the statuses will tell you. I think there's an order that you have to delete it in. Like if you have your cloud environment and you try to delete one, it'll say like, do you want to also delete your persistent disk or something like that? I think that message shows up, but yeah. Right, cannot delete this disk because it is attached. You must delete the cloud environment first.
Yes, that's what I just noticed because I went up and I deleted the cloud environment and then the disk disappeared. Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thanks.
Yeah, and you can keep your persistent disk too if you want to keep your persistent disk and delete your cloud environment, you can do that. And then the next time you create your cloud environment, that persistent disk will attach itself to the new one.
Yep, and the way to do that is to go through the cloud environment widget. At the bottom, I can click delete environment, and then there are two options. There's delete everything, including the persistent disk, or keep the persistent disk.
Okay. So can I still ask some questions? Is it possible?
Please.
Yeah, okay. So the next question I have is, I'm trying to figure out how we are a group of analysts working on the same project, right? And then the idea is to be able to use the resources, to use Terra to orchestrate all these resources on the cloud. And I guess, as you mentioned, at the moment is on Google Cloud that we leveraging through Terra. The question is, how do we handle, do we have, first of all, integration of these notebooks with like GitHub when we are sitting on Terra for version control and stuff like that? And if we are to work in collaboration on a notebook so that all of us do not keep how do you see that? I'm trying to figure out. We have a notebook where we are putting together some code. Are we going to be using an external version control system like GitHub? And each of us will maintain a copy of the notebook, which means then incurring extra cost. I mean, the same cost for all of us, since to run the notebook, you need a cloud environment? Or is it that we can have each of us an account and then have access to the same notebook using the same compute environment through the notebook sharing option? You see what I mean? When I share my notebook, do I share the entire compute, give access to the compute that notebook belongs to, I mean, is sitting on, or am I only sharing a copy of the file that the person will import in his environment and then use his own compute and processing power?
So if I understand your question correctly, the answer is you can do any of those combinations. If I were to add you as an owner or as a writer to this workspace, then you would come into this workspace and you would open, let's say you and I opened the exact same notebook, then we would both be working on that notebook and it would just be one instance of that notebook. We could even both be running computations on that notebook, and this is actually what the playground mode is for. If I share this workspace with you and you come in and try to work on the same notebook that I am working on, you will not have this option if I have opened it already. So it's kind of a first come, first serve thing. If I have already opened this as an editable notebook, you will only be able to open it in playground mode. And the difference between edit and playground mode is just that what happens in playground mode doesn't get auto-saved.
So it means that how do we code together? We are a team, we are coding together. The idea is that we are able to, we already know that for version control, we can have Git. So first question is GitHub. Do we have integration to Jupyter Notebook in Terra with GitHub? That's the first
Yes,
question.
there is. The short answer to that question is yes, you can integrate GitHub version control with notebooks.
Next question then will be, okay, we are a team of analysts and then we want to use, we do not want to actually waste on compute resources. So compute resources, there we allocate a very powerful machine, and then we all have access to notebook. So the ideal situation would be to actually give a copy of the notebook to each of us. We play with that and then we copy the changes to give. I'm trying to see how we can collaborate effectively with using one or multiple pointing. I'm trying to find out, to figure out.
Yeah. So for one thing, you can take turns. I don't know how well that would work for your team, but that would be one way to use kind of the settings that I'm describing here. Is if everybody wants to make sure that they're adding things to the source of truth, or to the copy that everyone will get to see, then they should be doing it in edit mode and not in playground mode. So they will either need to create a separate notebook, or they will need to take turns if they're working on the exact same notebook.
I think we might need to leave this room to go back to the main room. Liz is trying to summon us, but we can think more about that too. I think that was from Roland, that question, was it? Okay, yes. And we can give you a better answer tomorrow as well. I mean, that's an answer that would work for sure, but if we can come up with like another solution, then we'll let you know.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay. I'm gonna leave the room.